Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Joey Langenbrunner, and this is the Joey Langenbrunner Podcast. We talk about sovereignty and freedom here. We have a very special guest, a close friend of mine. His name is Esteban. And how do you want to really introduce? I know you're like a digital nomad. You love to travel. You're a geo-arbitrage like master. But
I mean, I am still learning the ropes, man. I'll say this, like we were going through the motions. Uh, yeah, so I think it's been like 2.5 years now that we're
yeah,
doing the whole like nomadic living,
yeah.
and I still feel like a lark. I'll tell you that.
So, so you like I always ask, what made you want to leave, kind of your home country and just go explore? Like let's start there because I've been a digital nomad. I've been to over 50 countries. I've lived,
Mhm.
primarily in Portugal. I know you were just in Japan, and you were sending me pictures and they looked amazing. But geez, especially with that exchange rate and stuff like that. But like we'll get into that later. But I mean, like, what really prompted you to just leave?
Honestly, it's kind of twofold. One is quality of life.
Yeah,
Can I get a better deal? And then the second one is just, you know, not really being locked down to anything.
right.
But I'll say this, probably I've been in the crypto space now since like 2019, and it really gets you to think differently. So when you're financially sovereign, then you start thinking about being location sovereign, right? So like
Right.
you're just independent, and all of it kind of works hand in hand. I've read a few books already, like The Sovereign Individual, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You, et cetera, et cetera. And all these ideas about like what the future holds and being in the information age and what does it mean for us now. I mean, that kind of took off. However, one thing that really kind of touched upon like myself and like it all clicked, like why living out of a suitcase for just so long? Well, in all honesty, I guess I kind of saw all of this coming as early as like 2000. Because
So,
when
so I want to stop you when you say, so when you
I,
say all that is coming, what are you
yeah,
exactly referring to? Like, what's coming?
so it's just the shedding of the old skin, right? The old ways of doing things. Um, I'm in my career's in animation.
Yeah.
I started off in the late 90s. I watched as departments went from analog to digital.
Yeah.
And in the process, it was pretty violent because people would lose their jobs. People would try to
Sure.
catch up on what needs to happen, and in order to stay relevant in the workforce. So since like 1999, all the way up through like 2008, I had lived out of a suitcase for the most part, going from city to city, state to state, job to job. I'm like, okay, I'm in animation, all of it's digital, and this is my life right now. So I got
Right.
comfortable in a sense. And then I planted seeds, I planted roots in Florida because that's what I believe you were supposed to do. But when I started my company, it was remote. So we were one of the first remote companies back in 2008. In
Wow.
the animation, yeah, in the animation space, we started up the whole digital pipeline thing, working remotely across borders, etc. Early adopter, quote unquote. And I'm like, hey, this is working because I'm making money, right? Out of like
That's
from
what
my home.
matters.
Yeah,
That's what matters. If you can make money, then great. You have nothing to complain about. But if you're broke and like what's
yeah.
the point? Like you're not gonna have a
It's
pretty life for sure. You don't want to go
yeah.
to
So
like some random, like third world or like second world or like developing country with just like a backpack and just like 12 bucks in your pocket.
right,
It
it's
sounds like an
there's a
awful
whole
experience.
yeah. It is a terrible experience because that's the thing. It's like I can say this with certainty. How I lived before, right, living out of a backpack, going job to job, was really stressful, and it's
Right.
almost like you're living hand to mouth. But then in this other instance, it's I have my own company. I'm making my own income. I have different streams of revenue, and traveling around again, it's like I had a much better experience. you know, it's like it's not as if I was living a life of luxury, traveling first class everywhere,
Sure,
five-star
sure.
hotels.
And most
Reasonable, yeah,
Right, right. And like most digital nomads, like like they're taking economy, they're trying to get good deals on Airbnbs. I feel like hotels are making a comeback, and I definitely want to bring that up.
yeah.
They're
Long-term stay
going
hotels,
what?
long-term stay hotels.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are
Yep,
coming back. It's so funny because I don't want to stay in those in the US, but for some reason out of the US, especially like in Europe or Asia, I like
yeah,
just in my opinion, you like they're actually pretty nice.
yeah. They are. I mean, we've had some really wonderful experiences out of the country. That's part of where the allure comes from. So after spending all this time being in the States, growing the business, having a physical location,
Yeah.
the whole COVID thing hit. And
Right.
the thing is, like, our business, yeah, my business has always worked in a remote pipeline situation, even when we had a physical office. Like, nothing changed. The only thing that changed was that we told people, hey, don't come in anymore, and then that was it. We picked up business within 2 hours. Everybody went home. It took them a while, got set up, business as usual. But then our competition for our sister studios, it took them almost like 6 months to a year to get back up and running. And not
Wow.
only did it take them that much time, but it also cost them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to set up infrastructure for remote work. So
What?
that's yeah. So it hit me like how being in this digital space, you have optionality. And if you're doing everything correctly, right, you're already ahead of the curve. Because now remote work, for better or for worse, is here to stay. They're
Right.
trying to corral people back, but most people are like, I don't want this anymore. You know?
Yeah, no, it's so
So
funny. Like I always see this in the news where it's like, I don't know, like Facebook or like some big company. Like
mm,
it's so funny when it's even in the tech world, they're like, oh, we're trying to get people to come back to the workforce. And I remember even seeing Trump saying that if federal employees are not going to come back into office, you
they're
know,
gone.
yeah, like they're gone. And I'm thinking to myself, like first of all, like great, I hope he fires all of them. But I'm just like, you're going backwards. People already
Yeah.
tasted this freedom where they can just wake up, just from the comfort of their own home, just work and make a
Yeah.
living. So instead of like getting into a car, wasting all that gas, getting into the office, just a complete waste of like commercial real estate. Geez, like
Yeah,
it's
it's
the short of that. But just like of course government's gonna go backwards in that, but like of course like that's gonna be like a whole nother topic. But geez,
well,
like
so briefly on that, I mean, the reason is you have like all of these was the median age of people in Congress is like 60, you know, 60,
yeah,
so they don't really get the landscape that is now. I had it was prior to leaving, it was a couple of years ago. I ran into the landlord of our building because we'd moved out, and he goes, I really miss bumping into you guys, like, and having this conversation. And it's like, yeah, that kind of sucks, but look, I mean, I get to run into you at the coffee shop every now and then, and we have these great conversations outside of the space. And then I said, but if you also noticed, and this is just me looking at my team, because I usually end up hiring like recent grads and people in their mid 20s and early 30s.
yeah,
And most of the time, they're all just like on their phone, right? And when they're talking to each other, they usually don't. So, an example in the lunchroom or the break room that we had, people were sitting around the table just looking at their phones, talking to the people that they want. So, I explained to our landlord, it's like, well, here's the thing. This gives you the option to talk for you to choose who you want to associate with. So, if people don't want to associate with their coworker, they don't have to. They can associate with their friends online. I mean, it's
right.
not as if they're stuck in that place, but that's what they choose to do. And so it's just like I'm choosing to talk to you at this coffee shop, or I'm choosing to talk to you over the internet. Even though you don't live that far away. But the very fact, like doing this setup, it's optionality. Like people now have more choices to live and shape their life.
So
And
yeah. So I want to go into that a little bit more and kind of
mhm,
bring up the topic of geo arbitrage.
arbitrage,
So you were just in Japan recently.
right?
Obviously the Japanese yen is English
Beautiful.
better. Yeah. Very different words, but basically the same thing. And you're telling me how cheap it is, how affordable it is, and we all know that Japan has some of the best food in
Yeah.
the world for sure, for sure. Sure, like France, Italy, some of these other places are some good competition, but Japan is known, especially for their fish.
Mhm.
But yeah, tell me about kind of how it was there in Japan when it comes to prices of food and travel. Long stay
Yeah.
hotels, kind of, like a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So what we did was we had booked an Airbnb, in Osaka. We did a 3 month stay. It was relatively inexpensive, right? I think we got a one bedroom, apartment, really cozy, really nice. Both
Yeah.
of us were happy. That was like $800.
A month?
And it was a month,
Okay. Yeah,
and
yeah, that's not bad.
yeah,
That's not bad.
and it was in downtown Osaka. So
Wow.
so I mean, for us, like if I was to take the equivalent of what we had in Osaka, it would have probably cost us maybe like 3-4 grand in Tampa.
That's
So
crazy.
I mean, the differences between like the pricing and like what you can buy, per yen or per dollar was ridiculous. And the thing is this, so that was also the bigger reason for like leaving and living abroad is because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're in the crypto space, sometimes you become a little bit of a miser and you're looking for better deals, considering that, oh, I'm going to be parting with, this, investment or this currency that's going up in value. Um, but at the same time, like it just, why am I like, here's an example. I go to a coffee shop daily. I love going there. They always made like the best cup of coffee I've ever had. It's a great way to wake up. And
Right.
I'm only
Right.
paying like a buck. I'm paying a buck 50 for it, right?
No
It's
way.
a yeah. I mean, I'll send you pictures later just to make you jealous.
So
But so it's like it's a nice cappuccino. It's a nice latte with a latte art and all that stuff. It's like a buck 50 US. And then I had the same coffee, over at like the local cafe here, Craft. It tastes good, but it's smaller and it cost me $8. I'm like, what is going on here? Right? The discrepancies between not only just the price, but the value, like the quality of what I'm being served is they're so off. So there's that arbitrage, right? Um, and while I know and I understand, like for the Japanese or the Koreans or everywhere who's local and that's where they are, it's like, well, they stay in their currency. The government creates a lot more currency. Everything gets really expensive for them. And then we come in with our outside dollars and we're like, oh yeah, no, this is great, and buy it all up, right?
right.
So in that sense, hey, it sucks if I was a local because I'm not making enough and all that stuff. But then over there, people aren't spending as much either. Like people are trying to like pinch pennies, to get by. But then that hurts the local economies there. So then you have foreigners like us that go over and spend a lot of money. Or for us, it's like, oh, hey, I mean, the wife and I were living on $30 a day in Japan. It's breakfast, lunch, dinner. I
Really.
mean, we only ate twice, the intermittent fasting and all that stuff. But
Good.
uh,
Good.
but for the most part, it's like $30, the two of us, it's $15 a person. I mean, I spent that much just on fucking lunch when I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. $30 is like chump change. If you're living in the US or Canada or the UK or some of like these more like Western countries. And sometimes I ask myself because I used to live in Portugal for like a year and a half,
Mm,
almost 2 years, and the cappuccinos there were 250 euro, so not
mm.
nearly as good as in Japan, but even the quality of the coffee and the milk were just nice, and the aesthetic of just being at a European cafe. I mean,
Yeah. Okay, so
like it's
so then
nice.
you mentioned this one, right? It's not just the quality of the food that is something to be like in awe of. We would go to 7-Eleven because konbinis in Japan are like the talk of the town. That is the thing everybody, kind of does when they're here. But
Right, right.
even when you go to like a 7-Eleven or a Family Mart, the cashier treats you with such kindness and respect, even though it's all polite. They might hate your guts as a foreigner, they might love you, I don't know, but they treat you with professionalism the whole way through. It makes your day. It's like, dude, I really love this. If I go to a local coffee shop, I don't give a shit who I am. It's just like, hey, coffee's here. Yeah, what do you want? It's a different vibe. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah. And that's one of those things where it's just a difference in culture. So
mhm,
some people don't care about that friendliness. Like especially
no,
if you go up to like New York, those people don't care.
yeah,
They want their coffee. They're not interested in how your day is,
mhm,
and that's it. And they like that. Like they're in their own head. Like they got their
yep,
AirPods in, and that's it. But in other cultures, people are going to be more open. They're going to be more polite, or they might be more cold, or they might be more fake, or whatever. But
yep,
but like the whole point of this is that you can pick and choose. I mean, there is like 193 like UN recognized countries, right?
right,
You know, so like you have like 193 choices, maybe maybe like a little bit more, like depending.
right.
But you got like you got almost 200 countries,
To choose
that you
from.
can choose
Yeah,
from. So, like me personally, I'm a huge fan of like Argentina. I'm wearing their
yeah,
jersey. I gotta rep it. Like what, like all this, crazy stuff that Malay's doing in Argentina. I got a few clients that are going down there, and and you can have more of like a Latino slash like European lifestyle down there.
right.
So I'm excited to go down there later this year, and experience that a little bit more. Um, but people like the Argentinian vibe, people like a Colombian vibe, people like a German vibe. All those are
Yeah,
very different. You want
they
some,
are.
yeah, 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 like or like you want to go to Moscow. That's going to be a very different vibe, especially if you're from the West. So,
Yep.
or China, whatever, like these are, completely different vibes. So, you have this choice where you can choose. Okay. So if you find a vibe that you like at a good price, which I mean, I don't know if you can beat like $1.50 in Japan. I mean, I'm gonna have to move there myself. Um, then
It's a little.
then that's a good spot to how you were talking about before, setting up roots. Because personally I think setting up roots is a good idea. I think having various bases is a good idea,
Yes.
or countries or cities of interest. Like I really think everyone should have 2 to 3 bases, like 2 to 3 homes. If you get up to that level, you can afford it, depending on the weather, saying, hey, I want to be in Japan during the summer, but I don't want to be there during the winter. Or maybe I do want to be in Japan during the winter because I love the snow, you know.
Right.
Or I want to go to New Zealand or South Africa during this time. Or I want to live in Dubai for half the year, but only during the winter because during the summer, like it sucks. You know,
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. The summer in Dubai was that was brutal.
it's terrible. It's terrible. But and so I study migration patterns,
Mm,
and the most millionaires, so like high net worth individuals are
mm,
moving to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, the UAE in general. And I'm thinking to
right.
myself, I'm like, okay, that tells me something. That really tells me something. But what I don't understand is how can you just live in the UAE during the summer? I went there. It's horrible. It's absolutely
All
horrible.
right.
Like air conditioned
Yeah.
to air conditioned to air conditioned. And it's just for me, like that's not worth it. But during the winter, it's great for networking, whatever
Yeah.
you're looking for.
So one of the crypto bros that we met out there, we were having dinner like by the Dubai Mall or by the Burj Khalifa in the Dubai Mall, and he's like, "Yeah, man, just you came at the fun time." I'm like, "Okay, there's the sarcasm, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, what we end up doing is we just leave, you know, and we
Yeah.
go someplace else and come back in the winter." I'm like, "What the hell?" But it's nice, and he was also saying that the ones who don't leave, they just sit in their homes and work or go to the office and work. And it's
Yeah.
like I get it, you know, and that's a part where this whole geo arbitrage thing, at least for me, on one part, so it's 2023 that we were working for a company, NDA. We'll keep on that one, but they love meetings and they love
Right.
having like long ass meetings, and I hate it. And it's just one of the worst, most unproductive things you can do. So being abroad left a left a gap. Like or it gave me a buffer zone where it's like, oh, I'm actually here. So if you want to talk to me, you need to talk around these times. So it sort of compressed that window for when they could do all these meetings. And I knew what would happen was they would have to get super efficient when they had their calls because they knew like after a certain point, I'm out.
Right.
So not only was 23 the most hyper productive because instead of having like 7 hour meetings, all day, now it's compressed down to 2 hours at least. That's a big reduction for me. And then
Yeah,
the
that's huge.
quality, yeah, and then the quality of these meetings became so much more high signal versus a lot of the noise. And getting people to, hey, if it's not important, hit me up on our chat,
Right.
and then we can hammer it out. And there's just so many more ways to communicate more effectively. And if somebody really needed, to have a sit down, we just pop up in a video call and kind of work through it. Yeah, you don't get the same energy because they're not in the room, but it's close
Right.
enough.
Right.
And the main point is, can we just solve the problem?
Yeah, and a lot of times you can solve the problem. You don't necessarily have to fly halfway across the world or
You know,
anything like that. But I guess to your point, when you are living overseas and you have
mm,
coworkers or something like that in other jurisdictions, other time zones, there's other advantages to that you may not really even think about. Because what you're talking about right there is exactly what I did for a company, that I was working very closely with last year. And I was
mm,
doing that, but I wasn't like doing it purposely, but I was kind
mm,
of doing it
right.
like subconsciously. And I didn't realize that until just this moment. So long story short, like I was like, it's like, okay, I'm only waking up at this hour, and then at this hour you're going to sleep, and then I basically have the rest of the day off. This is going to be great.
Right.
Especially if I'm like an Asian time zone. It's like my mornings and my evenings are busy, but like during the day I can, kind of do like basically do whatever. So, do we still have you?
You'd think the infrastructure here in the States would have gotten better after Milton.
So that's another thing I want to talk about. Wi-Fi. When what country do you think has the best Wi-Fi?
Oh my God.
And don't say Japan. I mean, it might be
Yeah,
Japan.
no,
You're like, where else?
Korea. Korea's infrastructure for internet was just top notch.
Really?
Yeah, I never a drop signal. The city of Seoul had
Yeah.
connections for everyone, and you could like Starbucks was kind of the main hub for a lot of people, and like their connections were really strong. So it wouldn't be surprising if you would like go outside and you'd see people trying to like connect to Starbucks out there. But there was internet cafes, there were libraries, shops. I mean, it was very well connected, and I never had a drop in Korea.
That's fascinating.
The
Yeah,
uptime was always up. It's crazy, man. It's like when I came back home, I hate saying it because it makes like I don't want to sound ungrateful, but it was almost like we were coming back to a third world with first class prices. And I'm like,
yeah.
man, this is really it's kind of a shock, you know?
Yeah, no, like reverse culture shock is pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that it hits you hard sometimes. It's like, oh, well, you have transportation that works. Like you could set your watch to it. You know, food quality is really strict, and you know what you're eating. Because it only has like one ingredient on there. It's not like I had a salmon for like a pre-workout before I went to the gym. And when I bought the salmon, I was looking at everything, and I was just looking for something that said salmon and salt. That was it. That's all I wanted.
You're not
But
gonna
when I'm
find it.
reading, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
salmon, salt, something else, and the coloring was added to the feed. I'm like, to the feed? What are you talking about? And it's like, oh, what they feed, like the farm raised salmon, helps to produce a brighter color. I'm like, dude, that's not what I want. Because when I
Right.
remember I was in Japan, I would buy tuna or salmon, and that's all it would say: tuna caught today, salmon caught today. Like, why is this? I get it. You're trying to transport, preserve, and all that stuff, but I mean, I don't want you to lie to me about the coloring or beef from Austria. Like Austrian meat is absolutely to die for,
Really?
right?
Austria.
Yeah,
I know
Aust
Australian beef is good.
Austrian food, right? Like
Yeah.
it's still agricultural to a certain extent,
Okay.
you know. Like the only big metropolitan that they have is Vienna, and then outside of Vienna, you have a lot of mountains, valleys, rivers, etc. It's beautiful, very storybook-like, and they're very prideful about their Austrian beef, Austrian wurst, Wiener Schnitzel. Like they are very proud of the meat products that get produced. Cheese, milk, and all that, totally top notch. And I remember just getting a ribeye while I was in Austria. I'm like, man, it's a little smaller, but it's a lot more tender, and
Yeah.
it tastes a little different. I'm back in the States, and I'm getting this like gigantic ribeye, and I'm like, okay, this is really big. It's tempting, and then when you find out, oh, most of our meat is put together with meat glue, or they pump the meat products with certain other preservatives and chemicals to give it the illusion that it looks bigger, or the color that makes it look more fresh. It's like we couldn't have anything further from the truth. I'm
Right.
like, wow, it is just. I hate to say it, man, but it's like it is just a different way of living. And so that's the geo arbitrage. It's not just the price, but it's just like on a whole different other front,
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to your health, because if you're consuming these kind of chemicals, what is that doing to your health long term?
right?
You know? Because when I was living in Portugal and I was eating the steak there, I remember like the steak just being like sweet and light. Like it was
Yeah,
still like pretty big, but it was like sweet and light. And then I come back to the US and it's just like heavy. Just heavy. Like it's
yeah.
still good, don't get me wrong.
It,
Like
ma- it
yeah,
makes you
like
feel a certain way, you know?
yeah, yeah, it's different. But when I was in Portugal, like man, like I feel like I can eat like two ribeyes. Like it's just so light.
I know that's the other part. It's like in Korea and Japan, I ate like a fucking pig, right? So I was just eating a lot, but I'd weigh on the scale because I was also cutting as well, right? Just trying to shed the weight from earlier. And I'm like, okay, the food quality is really good. I know I'm eating real food because I'm not gaining, right? And things are being in moderation. Like this is really strange. I'm only back like a week and a half now, and like I'm noticing some changes. And we go to the grocery store. We try to buy as much whole food as possible. At least like, well, this one has three ingredients, and it's just celery, and this other version of celery has like seven ingredients. So we're trying to get like what we can, and like this is just really weird. I want to say nice things, but I gotta call it like I see it. You know.
No, no, you're absolutely right. So, anyways, we only got like a little bit more time here. What I
Yep.
want to know is, I mean, like, what's your next travels, man? Like, where are you like dying to go? Like, where you want to go and just kind of like do more of like this geo. Like, I can't say the word, sometimes, but like, what's your next trip?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure that out. Like we had this idea before we came back of exploring Central and South America.
Do it.
And most of it is because we have family in Central and South America. Just like in Europe, we have, property there that we can go to, and we have property in Central America we can go to. It's like, why not take advantage of those, right? You were talking about having several bases. These would be our two bases for the most part. It's friends, family, home. We're good. So it's not as if we would feel alone when we go, long term. Um, but then it just kind of hit us like we're not really sure what we want to do right now. And maybe that's just because we have too many options, right? Because we have we fell in love with Korea. You know, Korea has been amazing for us, even though they have their own issues. Japan was always like a go-to. Austria is always another one. But I'm also interested in like checking out Thailand again. We didn't have a great time the first go around, but
Yeah.
that's because we didn't know. And now that we know a lot more than we did before, it's like, would it be different? And then maybe check out Dubai again because we didn't stay there as long as we'd like, and maybe not go during the summer.
Right. It's so funny because sometimes you might go to a place and you might not like it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will have to go to, you like back to a place a few times in order to like it. And like that's kind of my story like with Paris because I went to
Mm,
Paris like over 10 times and every single time I hated it. I was like, I just don't like it. I didn't feel like I was being treated nice. Like there was like some sketchy areas, stuff was overpriced. It's just I don't like it's just too French. I don't know how to explain it. And then and then my last time I went, I got it. It clicked. And I was
mm,
like, this city is absolutely amazing. Like, not only is it just beautiful, but like the food is like so high quality. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'm American. The French are not like, whatever. It's
yeah.
there. But just, like you are in their country, yeah, like, and like I fell in love with Paris, man. And like I can't wait to go back. I'm just like, this place is, it's amazing. Like, it's a little bit more on the expensive side, compared to, like Japan
Right.
and stuff like that. But,
Well, well,
with that being said, like, I
yeah.
loved it.
Let's touch on that one because this is something that really became apparent to me. So there's always been that quote, right? By was it Chris Henderson? He's like, "Oh, go where you're treated best,"
Right.
right? So for us, it's the idea has been, well, go where your money is treated best. Okay, there's that part, but for us, it was like go where we felt most inspired, you know,
I really like
where
that. I really like that.
yeah, and so like even though we were paying a little bit more in Austria, historically, artistically, musically, culturally, was just so rich. It was worth every penny to
You
be
pay for
there.
what you get sometimes, and if you want like a premium product, sometimes you have to pay. I mean, there's some
Yeah,
premium products that are kind of like a Gucci and it's like fake and stuff like that. But when you are choosing, on the country for you to spend some time, live, or anything like this, there's so many factors that you really, really have to give in. So,
yep.
anyways, so we're gonna wrap this up. Esteban, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks
We'll
for having
definitely
me
have to
on.
have you on, some other time, after you go on your next travels, and stuff like that. When you go to Central America, I want to hear some crazy stories. I want you to go to Colombia. You got to hit up Argentina, man.
That is on
Mexico
the
has,
list.
yeah. I mean, Mexico has some like six spots too. So like, there's so much to explore in Latin America. It is totally overlooked sometimes. But anyways, it was an absolute pleasure, and until next time.